Before you close your eyes tonight, ask yourself one question. What if everything you've been told about your zodiac sign was only the final chapter of a story that began thousands of years ago? A story buried beneath desert sands, hidden inside forgotten temples, carved into ancient stones by civilizations that disappeared long before history was ever written. Millions of people wake up every morning and read their horoscope. They believe the stars reveal something about who they are, but very few stop to ask who decided that 12 constellations could define human destiny. And why did some of the world's oldest civilizations risk their lives to preserve this mysterious knowledge? Tonight, we're not exploring astrology, we're traveling backward through time to uncover the forgotten origins of the zodiac. And the truth may be far stranger than the myths. Take a slow, deep breath, dim the lights if you haven't already, find a comfortable place to rest, and together, let's begin our journey. Around 6,000 years ago, long before Rome, before Greece, even before the pyramids reached their final height, the night sky looked almost exactly as it does today. The same stars shimmered above silent deserts. The same constellations drifted slowly across the heavens. But unlike us, ancient people didn't simply admire the stars. They depended on them. Every harvest, every journey, every season, and every king, every war, everything depended upon understanding the movements of the heavens. Imagine standing in the middle of an endless desert, no roads, no cities, no electric lights, only darkness again, and above you, a sky overflowing with thousands of brilliant stars without modern distractions. The Milky Way stretched across the heavens like a glowing river. It was impossible not to wonder who placed these lights in the sky. Did they have a purpose? Were they trying to communicate? Or were they simply silent witnesses watching humanity from above? Questions like these became the foundation of civilization itself, because before there were calendars, before clocks, before written history, there were the stars. Every evening they appeared. Every morning they disappeared, always following patterns, always returning, never failing. To ancient observers, order in the heavens suggested order on earth. If the sky followed invisible rules, perhaps human life did too. This simple observation changed history forever. Far to the east, between the mighty Tigris and Euphrates rivers, lay the fertile lands of Mesopotamia, often called the cradle of civilization. Here, cities rose from mud bricks. Farmers transformed deserts into fertile fields. Merchants crossed vast distances carrying copper, spices, and precious stones. But among the priests who served inside towering temples, another task quietly unfolded. Night after night, year after year, generation after generation, they watched the sky, not for entertainment, not for curiosity, but because they believed the heavens revealed the will of the gods. Every unusual eclipse, every bright comet, every wandering planet, every strange alignment was carefully recorded on clay tablets. Thousands of these tablets still exist today. They reveal something astonishing. The earliest sky watchers weren't searching for personality traits. They weren't asking whether someone born in July would be loyal or whether someone born in October would fall in love. Their questions were far more serious. Would the king survive? Would the harvest fail? Would enemy armies invade? Would rivers flood? The heavens were viewed as a cosmic warning system. Every movement carried meaning, or at least they believed it did. As centuries passed, these observations became increasingly detailed. Patterns emerged. Certain groups of stars always rose during particular seasons. Some disappeared as others returned. Over hundreds of years, ancient astronomers began dividing the sky into recognizable sections. Not because they wanted to invent astrology, but because they needed a reliable celestial map. Among these countless stars lay a narrow path, a pathway followed by the sun throughout the year. Today we call it the ecliptic. Along this path, the moon traveled. The visible planets wandered. Nearly everything important in the heavens seemed to pass through the same celestial highway. Ancient scholars marked the constellations surrounding this path. Eventually, 12 major constellations became especially significant, not because nature demanded exactly 12, but because 12 fit beautifully with their calendar, 12 lunar cycles, 12 months, a complete circle, order from chaos. This system slowly evolved into what we now recognize as the Zodiac. Yet the Zodiac wasn't created overnight, it wasn't revealed by a prophet, it wasn't discovered in a single moment of inspiration. It developed gradually across centuries of careful observation, mixed with religious beliefs, political power, and human imagination. The word zodiac itself comes much later through Greek influence, but its roots stretch deep into Babylonian civilization. Their priests transformed astronomy into something much larger. To them, the sky wasn't empty. It was alive. Every constellation represented divine beings. Every planet carried symbolic meaning. The heavens became a sacred language, one that only trained priests could interpret. This gave them extraordinary influence. Imagine advising a king. You don't simply offer political opinions. Instead, you point toward the heavens. The gods have spoken. Few rulers would dare ignore such a warning. Whether these celestial messages were genuine or symbolic, their power over society was undeniable. Kings delayed wars. Temples held ceremonies. Entire cities changed their plans because of what priests believed they saw in the stars. The zodiac was becoming something much greater than a star map. It was becoming a source of authority. Yet something fascinating happened. Different civilizations looked at the same stars there and imagined completely different stories. Where one culture saw a lion, another saw a guardian spirit. Where one imagined a scorpion, another envisioned a divine protector. The stars themselves never changed, only the stories did. This reminds us of something deeply human. When people gaze into darkness, they naturally search for meaning. Patterns comfort us, stories connect us. Symbols help us understand an unpredictable world. Perhaps that's why the zodiac has survived for thousands of years. Not because everyone agreed about its meaning, but because every civilization found its own reflection among the stars. As centuries passed, empires rose and fell, languages changed, religions spread across continents, yet the constellations remained silent, patient, watching history unfold beneath them. The knowledge recorded on fragile clay tablets traveled through merchants, conquerors and scholars and explorers. Each generation added new ideas. Some preserved the old traditions. Others transformed them completely. By the time ancient Greece inherited this celestial knowledge, the zodiac would begin another remarkable transformation. Its symbols would acquire new myths, new heroes, new gods, and eventually they would become connected not only to kingdoms but to individual lives. That is the version most people recognize today. But before that happened, another civilization along the Nile was also studying the heavens, and what they believed about the stars may surprise you. As our journey continues, we'll travel to the mysterious temples of ancient Egypt, where astronomy, religion, and eternity became inseparable beneath the endless night sky. As the warm winds drifted across the deserts of North Africa, another civilization was looking upward. Along the fertile banks of the Nile River, where life depended entirely upon the rhythm of the annual flood, the ancient Egyptians developed a relationship with the heavens unlike any other. To them, the sky was not simply above the earth, it was part of the earth. Every sunrise was more than the beginning of a new day. It was the daily rebirth of the sun god. Every sunset marked his journey into the mysterious underworld, a place where darkness, danger, and renewal existed together. The stars were not distant balls of burning gas. They were eternal companions of the gods, silent spirits who watched over both the living and the dead. If you stood outside an Egyptian temple more than 4,000 years ago, you would have seen priests waiting patiently through the night, not speaking, not celebrating, simply observing. Their eyes followed the slow procession of stars across the sky. They measured time with remarkable precision, not using clocks, but using the heavens themselves. One particular star held extraordinary importance. Today we know it as Sirius. Each year, just before sunrise, Sirius briefly appeared on the eastern horizon after weeks of invisibility. This event, known today as its heliacal rising, closely coincided with the annual flooding of the Nile during many periods of ancient Egyptian history. To Egyptian farmers, this was more than an astronomical event. It was the signal that life would soon return to the land. The river would overflow. Fresh soil would spread across the fields. Seeds would grow. The people would eat. An entire civilization learned to trust the heavens because year after year, the stars seemed to keep their promises. But while Egypt focused heavily on celestial cycles connected to agriculture and religion far to the east, the Babylonians were creating something even more systematic. Imagine climbing the massive stairways of a Babylonian ziggurat, higher, higher, until the sounds of the crowded city below began to fade. At the top, priests stood beneath an enormous dome of stars. The higher they climbed on, the clearer the sky became. Night after night, they recorded what they saw, not once, Not twice, but for centuries, generation after generation, clay tablet after clay tablet. Some of these records survived buried beneath the sands for thousands of years. When archaeologists finally uncovered them, they discovered one of humanity's earliest scientific archives, rows of careful observations, dates, planetary movements, eclipses, moon phases. The Babylonians noticed something remarkable. While thousands of stars filled the heavens, the sun, the moon, and the visible planets all seemed to travel through the same narrow band of sky. This pathway became the focus of intense study. Rather than dividing the entire heavens into countless sections, they concentrated on this celestial road. Over time, they organized it into 12 primary regions associated with familiar constellations. The number 12 was practical. It aligned closely with their calendar and made calculations easier. It helped transform the unpredictable sky into something that could be measured, tracked, and remembered. This was one of history's greatest intellectual achievements. It combined careful observation with symbolic interpretation. The stars were no longer random lights. They became part of an organized cosmic map. Yet an important distinction remained. For the Babylonians, these constellations were primarily tools for interpreting events affecting kingdoms, rulers, weather, and society as a whole. The idea that every individual possessed a personal zodiac sign developed much later. This is one of history's most misunderstood details. Modern astrology often begins with birthdays. Ancient Babylonian astronomy began with nations. Kings asked questions that reflected the concerns of an empire. Would famine arrive? Would neighboring kingdoms attack? Would disease spread? Would the next harvest succeed? The answers were sought in the heavens. Whether those interpretations reflected reality or belief, their influence shaped political decisions for centuries. As Babylon grew into one of the ancient world's greatest cities, its knowledge spread through trade routes stretching across the Middle East. Traveling merchants carried more than spices, more than textiles, more than precious metals. They carried stories, ideas, mathematics, religious traditions, and astronomical knowledge. Civilizations borrowed from one another constantly. No great culture developed entirely alone. Instead, ideas flowed across deserts, crossed rivers, and sailed along coastlines. Each culture adapted them, changed them, expanded them. The zodiac was never the invention of a single person. It was the result of thousands of years of shared human curiosity. As empires conquered neighboring lands, knowledge traveled with soldiers. When scholars translated foreign texts, ancient observations found new audiences. What began in Mesopotamia slowly reached lands far beyond its borders. Eventually, it arrived in Greece. There, everything would change. The Greeks admired Babylonian astronomy, but they also loved stories. Where Babylonian scholars often emphasized records and omens, Greek thinkers surrounded the constellations with unforgettable myths. Suddenly, the stars were no longer only markers of time. They became heroes, monsters, hunters, creatures of impossible beauty. The night sky transformed into a vast storybook. Each constellation gained a dramatic tale explaining how it reached the heavens. Some of these myths remain famous even today. The mighty lion, the great bull, the twins, the scorpion, the archer. Whether these stories reflected earlier traditions or were reimagined over time, they help preserve the constellations for future generations. Stories are easier to remember than numbers. A child might forget a sequence of stars, but few forget the image of a hunter chasing a lion beneath the stars. In this way, myth became memory, and memory preserved the sky. Yet beneath the beautiful stories, the original purpose slowly faded. Many people remembered the maths. Fewer remembered the careful observations that came first. This blending of science, symbolism, religion, and storytelling is one reason the zodiac continues to fascinate people today. It exists at the crossroads of many human traditions. It is part astronomy, part history, part mythology, and part cultural inheritance. But another transformation was still ahead, one that would change the zodiac forever. It would no longer belong only to priests or kings or temple scholars. Instead, it would become personal. People would begin asking a new question, not what does this mean for the kingdom, but what does this mean for me? That single change would reshape the zodiac for thousands of years to come. And it all began as the ancient world entered a new age, one shaped by philosophers, conquerors, and the expanding influence of Greece. In the next chapter of our journey, we'll follow the zodiac into the Greek and Roman worlds, where familiar myths took shape and the idea of personal horoscopes gradually emerged from a blend of astronomy, philosophy, and tradition. The stars above ancient Greece were the very same stars that had watched over Babylon, the same stars that reflected in the waters of the Nile, and the same silent lights that countless generations had studied before them. Yet, when the Greeks looked into the heavens, they saw something different, not because the stars had changed, but because people had. By the 4th century before the Common Era, the Greek world had become a meeting place for ideas. Trade routes connected distant kingdoms. Travelers returned with stories from Egypt, Persia, Phoenicia, and Mesopotamia. Knowledge flowed almost as freely as the sea itself. Among the many ideas arriving from the East, none proved more enduring than the study of the heavens. Greek scholars admired the careful observations preserved by Babylonian astronomers. They recognized that these ancient records contained centuries of meticulous work. Instead of starting from the beginning, they built upon what already existed. This became one of the defining strengths of Greek civilization. They rarely claimed to invent everything. Instead, they questioned, they organized, they explained, and then they transformed. As astronomical knowledge spread through the Greek world, the zodiac began taking on an entirely new identity. No longer was it simply a celestial calendar. No longer was it only a guide for predicting the fortunes of kings. Now, it became a mirror of human life. Imagine walking through the busy streets of Alexandria, one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. Here, massive libraries collected books from every known civilization. Scholars debated philosophy beneath marble columns. Mathematicians measured the earth. Doctors studied the human body. Astronomers mapped the heavens. It was in places like this that ideas from Babylon and Egypt merged with Greek philosophy. The result would influence history for more than 2,000 years. One of the greatest changes was not astronomical, it was psychological. Greek thinkers believed the universe operated according to hidden patterns. If nature followed laws, perhaps human lives followed patterns as well. This simple question opened the door to a completely different way of thinking. Instead of asking, what will happen to the kingdom? People increasingly wondered, what kind of person am I? The heavens were no longer viewed only as signs for rulers. They became symbols connected to individuals. Birth itself became important. If someone entered the world beneath a particular arrangement of the sky, perhaps that arrangement carried meaning. This gradual shift gave rise to what historians now recognize as natal astrology, the interpretation of a person's birth chart based on the positions of celestial bodies at the time of birth. It did not appear overnight, nor was it universally accepted. Even in ancient times, many philosophers disagreed. Some argued the stars merely marked time. Others believed they reflected divine order. Still others rejected astrological claims altogether. The ancient world was filled with debate, just as ours is today, yet the fascination continued to grow. Part of its appeal came from the stories. The Greeks surrounded nearly every constellation with unforgettable myths. Consider the constellation we now call Leo. To many Greeks, it represented the Nemean lion, a fearsome beast whose hide could not be pierced by ordinary weapons. According to myth, it was defeated only after an exhausting struggle by the hero Heracles. Rather than allowing the creature to vanish from memory, the king of the gods placed it among the stars. Whether one views this as legend or symbolism, the story transformed a cluster of distant stars into something deeply human. The same happened with Taurus, Gemini, Scorpio, Sagittarius. Each constellation became part of an enormous cosmic narrative. Together, they formed a celestial library. Parents read stories to their children. Sailors remembered them while navigating open seas. Travelers used them to identify familiar stars. The myths preserved the constellations across generations. And perhaps that was their greatest purpose. Not necessarily to explain the universe, but to help people remember it. As Greek influence spread across the Mediterranean, another extraordinary figure entered history. Alexander the Great. His conquest stretched from Greece to Egypt, across far as India. All of our is India, although his empire lasted only a short time, the exchange of ideas it created endured for centuries. Astronomy, mathematics, religion, language, art, everything mixed together. The zodiac traveled farther than ever before. Local traditions blended with foreign beliefs. No culture simply copied another. Each adapted the zodiac to fit its own understanding of the world. By the time Rome rose to power, The zodiac had already become an international language. The Romans embraced much of Greek culture. They admired Greek philosophy, they studied Greek science, and they adopted many Greek myths, changing only the names. Zeus became Jupiter, Ares became Mars, Hermes became Mercury, the constellations remained, but the stories slowly evolved once again. Roman writers helped spread these traditions across an enormous empire stretching from Britain to North Africa. As roads expanded, ideas traveled with astonishing speed. A merchant leaving Syria, a soldier stationed in Gaul, a scholar teaching in Rome, all could share the same familiar zodiac. For perhaps the first time in history, millions of people across different cultures recognized the same 12 signs. Yet despite its growing popularity, not everyone was convinced. Several respected philosophers warned against assuming that the stars controlled human destiny. Some argued that believing everything was predetermined would rob people of responsibility. Others insisted that wisdom came from choices, not constellations. These debates remind us that skepticism is not modern. People questioned astrology even in antiquity. The conversation has lasted for thousands of years, and it continues today. The zodiac endured, not because everyone agreed, but because it answered something deeply human, the desire to find meaning, to understand ourselves, to feel connected to something larger than our own brief lives. On a clear night, looking upward can inspire a profound sense of wonder. The same stars that watched over ancient kings still shine above modern cities. They have witnessed every empire, every discovery, every revolution, every generation. Perhaps that continuity explains why they remain so captivating. Yet history was about to enter a darker chapter. The Roman Empire would eventually weaken. Libraries would burn. Trade routes would collapse. Many ancient texts would disappear forever. Knowledge that had survived for centuries suddenly faced extinction. For a time, it seemed possible that the story of the zodiac might vanish along with much of the ancient world. But it did not disappear. Instead, it found unexpected guardians. Scholars in distant lands carefully copied fragile manuscripts. Astronomers preserved mathematical knowledge. Translators carried ancient ideas into new languages. Across deserts, across mountains, across centuries, the story survived. And when Europe slowly emerged from the turmoil of the early Middle Ages, the zodiac would return once again, not as a forgotten relic, but as a mysterious body of knowledge that fascinated kings, scholars, physicians, and ordinary people alike. Its next chapter would unfold behind monastery walls, within royal courts, and inside secret libraries where ancient manuscripts were treated as priceless treasures. That is where our journey will continue next. The mighty Roman Empire had fallen. Its great roads slowly crumbled. Bustling cities grew quieter. Many magnificent temples were abandoned. Across parts of Europe, the world entered a period of uncertainty. For generations, people would later describe these years as an age of darkness. Yet history is rarely that simple. While some ancient knowledge was lost, much of it survived, not in one place, but in many. Far from the ruins of Rome, scholars continued copying ancient manuscripts by hand. Every page required patience. Every symbol demanded precision. A single mistake could change the meaning of an entire passage. Imagine sitting inside a quiet room lit only by oil lamps. Outside, the night is silent. Inside, a scribe carefully traces each letter onto fresh parchment, hour after hour, day after day, month after month, without realizing it. These patient scholars were preserving thousands of years of human curiosity. Among the texts they copied were works on mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. Some also included astrological writings that had been passed down through Greek and Babylonian traditions. These manuscripts traveled across cultures and languages. Greek became Syriac, Syriac became Arabic, Arabic texts were later translated into Latin. With each translation, ideas continued their remarkable journey through history. During the Islamic Golden Age, beginning in the 8th century, scholars in cities such as Baghdad, Damascus, and Cordoba studied and expanded upon earlier Greek, Persian, and Indian works in astronomy and mathematics. Many distinguished carefully between astronomy, the scientific study of celestial objects, and astrology, which interpreted symbolic meanings from the heavens. Both subjects were explored, but they were not considered identical. Astronomers developed increasingly accurate observations. They improved mathematical models. They refined instruments. The astrolabe, a beautifully crafted device used to measure the positions of celestial objects, became one of the most important scientific tools of its age. With it, travelers could navigate, scholars could calculate time, observers could better understand the movement of the heavens. Night after night, the sky revealed new patterns, not because the stars themselves had changed too, but because humanity's understanding had grown deeper. Centuries passed. Knowledge continued moving westward. Eventually, ancient texts reached medieval Europe. Universities began to emerge. Students gathered to study subjects that earlier generations feared might disappear forever. Astronomy returned to classrooms. So did philosophy. So did medicine. And alongside them, astrology found a place as well. To modern ears, this may sound surprising, but in medieval Europe, many educated people believed the heavens and the earth were connected in complex ways. Physicians sometimes consulted astronomical tables before choosing dates for certain treatments. Kings occasionally requested astrological advice before major decisions. Important events, coronations, and journeys, even weddings, were sometimes planned with celestial symbolism in mind. It is important to remember these practices reflected the beliefs of their time. They were part of a worldview very different from our own. Today, astronomy and astrology are generally understood as separate fields. Astronomy is supported by observation, mathematics, and scientific testing. Astrology remains a cultural and spiritual tradition for many people, but its claims about predicting personality or future events are not supported by scientific evidence. Understanding that distinction helps us appreciate history without confusing belief with established facts. Still, the mystery surrounding the zodiac only grew stronger, because wherever knowledge exists, legends soon follow. People whispered stories about hidden books, ancient scrolls said to contain forgotten wisdom, libraries rumored to hold secrets capable of revealing the future. Some claim that long-lost civilizations possessed perfect knowledge of the heavens. Others believed certain symbols contain mystical power. Most of these stories cannot be verified, yet they spread from generation to generation. Human beings have always been drawn toward mystery. The unknown invites imagination. The unanswered question refuses to disappear. That is one reason the zodiac survived not only as a practical system, but as a source of endless fascination. During the Renaissance, Europe experienced an explosion of curiosity. Artists painted the heavens with astonishing detail. Explorers sailed beyond familiar coastlines. Scientists questioned long-held assumptions. Printers filled cities with books. Knowledge spread faster than ever before. Among those studying the sky were remarkable observers who changed astronomy forever. They mapped planets with increasing precision. They challenged ancient models of the universe. They asked tough, difficult questions, even when the answers threatened powerful institutions. The telescope transformed everything. For the first time, people could see mountains on the moon, moons orbiting Jupiter, countless stars invisible to the naked eye. The universe suddenly appeared far larger and far more complex than anyone had imagined. With each discovery, the line between careful observation and symbolic interpretation became clearer. Astronomy increasingly focused on measuring what could be observed. Astrology gradually became a separate tradition centered on meaning rather than measurement. Yet the zodiac itself remained familiar. Its 12 symbols had become deeply woven into art, architecture, literature, and everyday culture. Walk through an old European cathedral, and you might find zodiac carvings decorating ceilings. Visit an ancient clock tower, and zodiac symbols may surround its face. Open a Renaissance manuscript, and the familiar signs appear once again. The ram, the bull, the twins, the crab, the lion, the maiden, the scales, the scorpion, the archer, the sea goat, the water bearer, the fish. Thousands of years had passed, empires had fallen, religions had changed, languages had evolved, yet these symbols endured, not unchanged, but continuously reinterpreted. Each generation gave them new meaning. Some viewed them as sacred, some treated them as entertainment, others rejected them entirely. Perhaps that flexibility explains their extraordinary survival. A rigid idea often disappears. An adaptable symbol can live forever. As the modern age approached, newspapers would eventually print daily horoscopes. Radio hosts would discuss zodiac compatibility. Television programs would popularize astrological personality traits. What had once belonged primarily to temple priests and royal scholars would become part of everyday life. Millions would know their zodiac sign. Very few would know its long and complicated history. The story had traveled farther than anyone in ancient Babylon could have imagined. But one final mystery remained. If the zodiac has changed so dramatically over thousands of years, Why do so many people still feel connected to it today? Is it the stars themselves, or is it something deeply human? Our endless search for identity, meaning, and connection? That question will guide us into the final chapter of our journey. As the centuries continued to pass, the world changed faster than ever before. Ships crossed oceans, railroads connected continents. Electric lights slowly replaced the darkness that had surrounded humanity for thousands of years. For the first time in history, millions of people could live their entire lives without ever seeing a truly dark night sky. The stars were still there, but fewer people looked up. And yet, in a curious twist of history, the Zodiac became more popular than ever. Newspapers began printing daily horoscopes. Soon radio programs mentioned zodiac signs. Television carried them into millions of homes. Then came the internet, social media, smartphones. Today, with just a few taps, anyone can discover their zodiac sign, read a horoscope, or compare their compatibility with someone halfway around the world. The symbols that once appeared on ancient clay tablets now appear on glowing screens, separated by more than 4,000 years, yet somehow still familiar. But here is the great historical surprise. The zodiac that many people know today is not identical to the one first mapped by Babylonian astronomers. It has been translated, retold, expanded, reimagined, and adapted by countless civilizations. Each culture added something new. Each generation left its own fingerprints. Like an ancient river, the zodiac never stood still. It kept flowing, changing shape while still remaining recognizable. Perhaps that is its greatest mystery. Not that it remained unchanged, but that it survived change itself. Imagine those first observers standing silently beneath the skies of Mesopotamia. They had no telescopes, no satellites, no computers, only patience night after night. They watched the heavens with extraordinary dedication. They noticed patterns, recorded movements, compared observations made decades apart without realizing it. They were laying the foundations for both astronomy and traditions that would eventually influence cultures across the globe. Thousands of years later, modern science has revealed a universe far larger than they could ever have imagined. We now know that our sun is only one ordinary star among hundreds of billions inside the Milky Way. Beyond our galaxy, there are countless others. The observable universe contains more galaxies than ancient civilizations could have dreamed possible. The night sky, once thought to be a ceiling above the earth, has become an endless ocean stretching beyond imagination. And yet, even with all this knowledge, many people still feel something profound when they look upward. Wonder, curiosity, humility, a quiet awareness that we are part of something much larger than ourselves. Perhaps that feeling, rather than any prediction, explains why the zodiac continues to endure. Human beings have always searched for meaning. Long before books, before cities, before written language, people search for patterns, faces in the clouds, shapes in the mountains, stories among the stars. Our minds naturally connect scattered points into meaningful pictures. It is one of humanity's greatest strengths. It allows us to imagine, to create, to remember. The constellations themselves are a beautiful example. The stars within a constellation are often separated by unimaginable distances. From Earth, they appear close together. But in reality, many are traveling through space independently. The pictures exist because of our perspective. That realization is strangely beautiful. It reminds us that meaning often comes from the observer. As much as the object being observed, history teaches a similar lesson. The Babylonians saw divine messages. The Egyptians saw eternal cycles. The Greeks saw heroic myths. The Romans spread familiar symbols across an empire. Medieval scholars preserved ancient manuscripts. Renaissance thinkers questioned old assumptions. Modern scientists explored the physical universe with extraordinary precision. Each generation looked upward. Each generation asked different questions. The sky remained the same. Humanity did not. And perhaps that is the true story of the zodiac. Not a tale of secret powers hidden in the stars, but a mere reflecting the hopes, questions, fears, and imagination of every civilization that ever lived. Its real power has never been the ability to change the heavens. Its power has been its ability to connect people across thousands of years. When you recognize the shape of Orion, or notice the curve of Scorpio, or search for Leo during a clear summer evening, you are sharing an experience with shepherds from ancient Mesopotamia, priests beside the Nile, Greek philosophers, Roman sailors, medieval monks, and modern astronomers. Few traditions have linked so many generations together. That connection alone is remarkable. As our journey nears its end, take one final moment to imagine the night, far from the noise of cities, far from glowing screens, far from hurried schedules. A quiet desert stretches toward every horizon. The air is still. Above, the stars burn with silent brilliance, exactly as they did thousands of years ago. Empires have vanished beneath them. Languages have come and gone. Kings have ruled and been forgotten. Yet the heavens continue their slow, patient, endless dance. Whether you see science, history, mythology, or simply beauty, the stars ask nothing of us. They simply invite us to look, to wonder, to imagine, and perhaps to remember that every generation has searched for its place beneath the same night sky. So tonight, as sleep gently begins to find you, let your thoughts drift upward, beyond the rooftops, beyond the clouds, beyond the familiar world, toward the quiet constellations that have watched humanity's story unfold for thousands upon thousands of years. Thank you for joining me on this journey through history. If you enjoyed traveling through the forgotten origins of the Zodiac, be sure to subscribe for more relaxing historical sleep stories exploring the mysteries of the ancient world. Until next time, sleep peacefully, and may your dreams carry you beneath a sky filled with timeless stars.